Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Simon, and I'm excited being with you once again today as we continue our Parenting with Purpose series. I hope you're enjoying it. Essential Qualities of Effective Parents is the section that we're on. We've been talking about achieving empathy in parenting, and we're in part 4 of that today. There's so much to talk about on this subject, and certainly you can't get into everything, but we're taking little chunks, little pieces, and elaborating on it in helping to fine-tune where things can be fine-tuned. Fostering empathy is so important, and that's why it's the first part of this series. And in talking about that, we've discussed the first 2 segments of the 5 essential steps for parents to learn understanding. Today, we're going to do our best to get through steps 3 through 5. The initial steps that we discussed last time was on cultivating self-awareness and self-care, prioritizing self-care. So many people have a problem with that part because they think of self-care as being selfish, thinking of yourself only. Well, that's not selfishness. Self-care is there to keep you going so you can be more unselfish, so you can be more giving in the things that you have to do and want to do. It's not selfishness. Selfishness is all about you. It's all about getting those things you want for yourself and keeping them. Self-care is getting yourself to a place where you can be sustained and doing more so you can give more to your loved ones and to others. Moving forward, steps 3 through 5 will delve into honing those active listening skills. That's so important. And what are you hearing? When children are small, they may not be able to explain what's going on, so you've got to read in between the lines of their grunts and groans or whatever it may be until they get a little older and are able to explain things. But what are you hearing? That also is important for us adults. Gaining a deeper understanding of the child's viewpoint is another aspect we'll be talking about today, and mastering emotional regulation within that parenting journey. That's a tough one, because if you haven't been working on mastering your emotions from day one, then you have strengthened a part of your brain, the dark side of your brain that we've talked about before, to a point where the other side of it, the bright side, the good side, the upper room of the brain, is weaker, and it defers to the dark side where emotions take control. And that's the addictive personality is down there in the basement of the brain, and we've discussed that before. Well, step 3, practice active listening. In counseling, we do that all the time. And when couples come in, I have them practice that. One will say something, the other one I'll have them repeat what they heard in a summary, and then was it heard right? And yes, it was heard right. And then, okay, now give your response to that. And we go back and forth like that for a while because we're teaching active listening. What am I hearing? Am I hearing it properly? You'd be surprised how many times people are not hearing everything that's being said. They're piecing a word here or a word there, or as they're hearing something, what they're really thinking about is their side of it. Oh, she's selfish. He's thinking of himself. She's this, he's that, and they didn't even hear what you had to say. So active listening is drawing the truth, drawing that information, and giving a summary is being able to explain what you're hearing and then find out, are you hearing it right? And in doing that, it helps retrain a person to make those adjustments if they're not hearing it right, if they're not hearing properly, if perhaps they are selfish, let's say, and they're only thinking about themselves, so they're not really hearing what you have to say. They don't care. They only care about what they're feeling and thinking, so they reinterpret what you said in a different way that supports them. And then, well, where'd you get that from? That's not what I said. we do that to our kids if we're not careful. And so active listening is something we have to practice. Active listening is a crucial communication technique that fosters understanding and empathy between the listener and the speaker. In this case, the caregiver or child, the parent or child. And when I say caregiver, we're talking about either mom or dad or both, or grandma or aunt or uncle or foster parent, step parent. Anyone that's a caregiver to that child needs to practice that active listening. This method goes beyond merely hearing spoken words. It involves attentively listening, interpreting the child's body language. When you listen to your partner or you listen to someone at work, you're not just supposed to hear what they're saying, you're supposed to observe how they're saying it and responding in a way that validates their feelings. Sometimes someone can say something, but they don't really mean it, and you kind of see them pulling back as they're saying it. Well, that's a clue. That's an indicator they really don't mean what they're saying. Now sometimes they could be relaxing and saying it, and that could be very innocent. But if you see something like that regularly with an individual, and then you start to interpret, okay, is that what they're really doing? And you see a pattern there, then you know, okay, every time I see that now, I know that person really doesn't mean what they're saying. They're pulling back. Or they might look down, they might look away when they're speaking to you, when they're saying something, because they're not being truthful. There's little clues that you pay attention to. And professionals such as, let's say, policemen, detectives, investigators, they're very good at that because they are trained in that. Who's lying? Are they telling you the truth or not? And you can see they're intently looking at you when you watch those programs on TV and the cops and whatever else, and you can see them intently looking at that person. You can do that with mom or dad. You can do that with husband, wife, parent, child. And that's what we're talking about, because as we're doing it, we're learning as well. When practicing active listening, caregivers should focus on the child without distractions. So, turn off the TV, even with your wife or your husband. Sometimes my wife might have something to say, and what I would do is turn off the TV or mute the TV, so I could let her know I'm giving her full attention. And of course, that's one of the number one complaints that wives have when they come to counseling is, he just sits there and watches TV. He's not even hearing what I have to say. He doesn't care, and blah, blah, blah. And well, he's zoning in on something, but he's not paying attention over here. And so I have to teach the husband, hey, mute the TV, turn it off, or definitely at least look the other way and don't glance back at the TV when your wife is talking to you. And that helps a great deal. And it makes her feel heard. It makes her feel like whatever she has to say is being received. And there's value in that. He cares. They'll be happy when it's practiced. Well, think of a child. When you practice that with your child, they say, oh, mom cares, dad cares, I'm being heard, I'm important. All that is helping develop that child, but also helping you bond in a deeper way with that child. So without distractions, acknowledge the child's feelings and reflect on what the child is saying. I'll just give an example. There's all kinds of examples, and this might be silly, but if a child expresses a frustration with a broken toy, some parents might laugh at it because they're trying to get the child not to cry and to distract them and all that. That's not doing any good. That's only going to make it worse. But actually what it's going to do is take the child away from the reality of the moment and teach the child to not have genuine emotions when something is going on. So the frustration of the broken toy, the caregiver might respond, it sounds like you're really upset because your toy broke. You're being honest. You're expressing what you're seeing in that child, the upset, the crying, or whatever it might be. Yeah, that's not comfortable. Nobody likes to hear a child crying, and it can grate at you, especially if you're very sensitive in your hearing. Yet you have to fight through that. You have to go through that and express what that child is expressing to help them to know you're hearing them. This reflection shows the child that their feelings are being understood and helps, well, it helps them to feel closer. It helps them to feel safer. It helps them to feel significant. It helps them to feel satisfied. And that satisfaction is acceptance, affection. When we're bonding in that way with our child, even though they're upset, but we're showing them we're understanding of their upset, we might not fix the problem right away, but we're conveying a message, we're planting a seed, and each time the seed is getting watered and watered and watered, and it starts to grow into something good, into a fruit of the Spirit, as we might say in Christianity. And so it helps them to learn to identify and express their emotions. And that works for, I often tell dads, hey, do that with your wife as well. That works there too. Active listening in childhood can lay the foundation for practical communication skills in adulthood. It helps the child feel valued and respected. As I said earlier, it's a bonding tool where in planting those seeds, you're going to grow something in the future that's going to bear fruit. And by the time they're teenagers, as you convey that active listening to them, they're conveying it back to you, they're conveying it back to others. You have just helped your child to emotionally mature instead of be stagnated in their emotional growth. Furthermore, active listening supports the child's emotional development by providing a safe space for them to express complex feelings and thoughts. I say safe because, as I've mentioned previously, there's three main intimacy needs that everybody has, three main needs that everybody has, and all the intimacy needs, all the other needs fall under those three main needs. Significance, I had to think about it, significance, security, and satisfaction. Now, in the National Christian Counselors Association, they have the Arno profile system for identifying temperaments. You can have different temperaments in those three main need areas. So they identify it as inclusion, which is social, so that's significance, control, which is security, and satisfaction would be affection in their report. And within that, you can have different temperaments, and it has to be done computer-wise because the paper tests are not accurate with that, since you can have different ones. You can have a dominant, and it'll show in those paper tests, but not in the computerized version. It'll break it down even deeper. I'm going into more detail than I need to here, but this is to help you to realize that when you are conveying this active listening to your child, you're giving them that sense of, I'm important, I'm significant. That helps them in their socializing, in their general activities, in their general thoughts. Especially if they're thinkers, they're soaking it in. The security is safety. You want your child to feel safe with you. If you're laughing because they broke something, or you're trying to get them distracted by laughing, or joking about it, or doing something else to just ignore it. Sometimes we have to ignore, but when something like that, if you bond with them through that active listening, now they're feeling safer being around you when they get upset. when they're stressed, when there's something up. We want them to be that way. And as they get older, they're more apt to talk with you when things are going wrong at school. Things are happening that they're confused about, they're unsure about. They feel safe coming to you because you've practiced that active listening with them. You've given them that security or sense of safety. And then that satisfaction is affection. So closeness, bonding, it's a fellowship type of thing that we talk about in the church. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it's I'm accepted, I'm recognized, I'm valued. When you're planting those seeds of active listening, they're soaking it in, and it's thriving, it's growing. So active listening supports the child's emotional development, and certainly that's what we want to do in our parenting. Active listening is a transformative approach that can significantly impact that child's development, maturity, emotional maturity. So many adults can be 40, 50, 60 years old, doesn't matter, emotionally stagnated in adolescence because they never matured out of that. And 9 times out of 10, it's because there were problems back there in the home or traumas that occurred that they never got help for or other things that could have happened. It teaches children that their thoughts and feelings are important and worthy of attention, which is crucial for their growth into well-adjusted adult life. Step 4, gaining a deeper understanding of the child's viewpoint. Now, we just talked a little bit about that, but this goes even deeper into that little older child and trying to understand where's that darkness coming from, or where's that behavior coming out of? What's causing this? What's causing that? Trying to put yourself in their shoes, in other words, which is empathy, to understand their perspective of whatever issues might be occurring. Trying to see situations from the child's point of view can help parents better understand the child's feelings and motivations. Adopting the child's perspective can foster a deeper emotional connection between parent and child, or caregiver and child, and facilitate more effective communication. So it brings up more communicating when you're trying to understand their perspective, and enhance emotional development, as I spoke of a moment ago. This approach is part of the broader parenting strategy of emphasizing empathy and understanding, encouraging parents to connect before you direct, to address the child's emotional and psychological needs. This empathic behavior or stance, empathy, as we've been saying, it not only aids the emotional development, it aids in conflict resolution. And it's something we should be practicing with one another. But ideally, when you have children and you're practicing it with your children, you're teaching yourself. But first you have to learn the steps in it and teach yourself so you can teach the child. But the more you're practicing it with your child, the better you get at it, the easier it is to practice with your husband or wife, or friends, or coworkers, or whoever else it might be. So there's I don't want to say double-edged sword, but there's a benefit to raising children in that as you're teaching them, you're teaching yourself. You're growing and maturing as well. And especially if you had issues where you didn't develop in certain areas, or you feel you were weak in certain areas, as you learn about that by getting the parenting books or whatever, watching the parenting stuff and on YouTube or TV, or observing other parents in church and other activities, you're learning, you're passing it along to your child, but you're also training yourself to strengthen yourself perhaps in that weak area. Don't just slough it off. By validating the child's feelings and experiences, parents promote a sense of security and self-worth. As I said earlier, that's crucial during developmental stages. Moreover, this practice is aligned with principles of attachment theory. Now, we hear a lot about attachment theory, and if someone can't attach, there's all sorts of problems. This is something that in counseling they're learning more and more about, that we're passing it along, but it suggests that robust and secure attachment between parent and child lays that foundation for healthy emotional and relational development. If the attachment isn't there between the caregiver and child, or parent and child, early on, that child is going to have, in many cases, a failure to attach or bond in the future. Now, certainly they can learn it, but there's going to be a big gap. That gap is they're going to have certain behaviors, but the bonding and all that goes in between there is going to be missing. And then the other behaviors of anger, self-protection, whatever else that may come out of that is over here also. So it's all or nothing type actions that are going on with no in-between occurring. And relationships, it's all that in-between stuff. The parent-child relationship resembles true fellowship as described in scriptures. Without agreement on the fundamental values and beliefs, genuine fellowship, it just doesn't occur. It's elusive. I see that correlation between gaining an understanding of your child's perspective in parenting and biblical fellowship. I see that there's a connection there. A biblical mandate in the Bible is love and nurture one another. So that's what we're supposed to do with our child. Love and nurture our child. And as we're loving and nurturing them, hopefully they're going to give it back as they get a little older. But we reap what we sow, as the scripture might say. But loving and nurturing, that's the foundation of Christian belief, of the Christian faith, and of what Jesus was teaching us. Bible scriptures collectively illustrate that true fellowship in the biblical sense involves a profound mutual understanding, a unified purpose, and essential agreement among believers. Such fellowship, parent or child, caregiver or child, or even the Christian church with the other Christian, or the co-worker, or you and the boss and whatever, that fellowship is not merely about social interaction, but encompasses a more profound spiritual and relational alignment, fostering a community or a family that reflects the love, unity taught by Christ. Now, I remember in the military, in basic training, they taught us because they assumed you know nothing. They assumed you weren't taught anything, and they tear you down, they cut off all your hair, they make you wear the same clothes, and they start from scratch to build you up. And you may know all these things, but they're assuming you don't, and they're assuming there's others who don't. So everybody's doing it together, and they build you up from scratch as a team to protect, to have the others' protection and safety, to be the backup if necessary, and helping and so on. That's fellowship. That's being there for one another. It works in the military. It should be working in the family. That's what the Bible teaches us. Bond in that way, valuing love and nurture. God is a God of love. He's not a God of war. He's not a God of punishment. He's a God of love. And keep in mind, some of the translations in the Bible, the words that could have 4 or 5 meanings, such as some of the Hebrew words or Greek words, they've used the human law translation in many cases, but some of those words could mean God just turns away. God lifts his protection. But then they might interpret it as God punished, God did this, God killed, and whatnot, when in fact it can be taken as he just looked away. He lifted his hand of protection. So Bible scripture collectively illustrates that true fellowship is essential. That fellowship between parent and child is not merely about social interaction, but encompasses a more profound spiritual and relational alignment, fostering a community or family that reflects the love and unity taught by Christ, as I said earlier. Step 5, well, we got there today, mastering emotional regulation skills. This is a tough one. If you didn't develop these skills in your childhood, it makes it more difficult in adolescence. And if you didn't develop it in childhood and adolescence, it makes it highly difficult in adult life. You have to really work much harder at it. Mastering emotional regulation serves 2 purposes in parenting. It fosters self-control, both in the parent and child. And remember, the fruit of the Spirit, self-control, is the last one in the fruit of the Spirit, and I believe it's the last one for a purpose. It's the most difficult one, especially if you weren't taught that early on. Educating the parents and children on identifying and understanding and managing their emotions is a critical step that can significantly impact parenting and the child's development and well-being. One effective way to learn or teach emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, is by modeling empathic behavior, modeling understanding, those things we've been talking about, modeling good behavior, modeling good communication. Every once in a while we say things, I'm allergic to cats, so every once in a while I'll say the demon cat, in the house, and our little grandchild, and said, "What do you mean demon?" As you could see, he was serious. I was just joking. We have to watch what we say, but to me it's a demon cat because I'm allergic to them, so I got to stay away. This approach demonstrates that parents to children how to recognize and articulate their feelings and how to respond to emotions of others in a caring and understanding manner. Again, we come back to the act of listening and how important that is. Emotion coaching is where parents learn while guiding their children through emotional experiences by validating their feelings and exploring the solutions. You're emotionally coaching your child, but in coaching your child, you're coaching yourself. You're learning, you're teaching. A good coach, whether it's basketball or sports or whatever it might be, they're not only coaching, but they're learning as they learn what to coach, how to play this particular activity, how to do this action and what to do. They're learning and they're coaching. Now they're getting coached as they're learning. It's a cycle, isn't it? It's a cyclical occurrence. And that's what life is. Life is a cycle. If we're loving, love is supposed to be coming back. Now, it might not come back from that same person that we're loving, but if you're a good person, if you're helpful, respectful, kind, you're likely to get that back from others. They'll be respectful to you or they'll be kind to you. It's a cycle. When we breathe, we're feeding carbon dioxide to the plants. And when they breathe, they're feeding us oxygen. It's a cycle. If you break that cycle, we die. Yeah, that's the way it goes. If you break a cycle of love, if you break that cycle of active listening, that cycle of empathy, bad things are going to happen. We don't want those bad things to happen. We want to mature our children in good ways so they can get a good start in life, but we're coaching ourselves as we're doing it. This process helps regulate emotion and strengthens the parent-child relationship, providing a secure emotional base for children to explore the world. This process helps regulate emotion and strengthens the parent-child relationship or caregiver-child relationship, providing a secure emotional base for children to explore. In a broader context, programs like Ruler, R-U-L-E-R, Ruler, developed by Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, offers structured approaches to integrating emotional intelligence training into school curriculum. Now, that program that Yale University developed is a program for students. However, it works for adults as well. Ruler enhances adults and students' emotional intelligence by focusing on those letters of the word ruler: recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions, which are essential skills for personal and academic success. If you just think of those words, ruler, am I coaching through that ruler? Am I practicing through that ruler? Am I recognizing what's happening with my child? Am I understanding? Am I labeling it properly? Am I expressing properly? Am I regulating my emotions properly? Incorporating these steps into everyday parenting, these parenting practices can significantly contribute to developing a nurturing and empathetic relationship with any child. Now, certainly you're going to have more difficult children and easier children. They all have different personalities. They're all unique, and we have to make our little adjustments. But if we practice this on a regular basis, it's going to encompass all the children, and then it's up to them to make right choices. And they still have to do that. But if you're setting the example, it makes it easier for them to want to follow your example. Each step is supported by scholarly works that provide deeper insights and practical advice for parents wishing to enhance their empathetic skills. Well, I hope that was helpful for you. Next time, we're going to get into achieving consistency in parenting. And I hope that as we're gaining a little something, maybe we're adults whose children are out of the home, but we can pass it along to others. We can think back and, well, okay, I could have done this, I could have done that. I can improve on that with my friends, with my wife, or my boss, or my coworker, or my friend at church. What we learn from our mistakes, we can make right in present day and for the future. Well, if you got something out of this, give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and that'll help us out. May your troubles be minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. God bless.